Solo runs are common in games like Pokemon that let you structure your party with only a single mon, but Fire Emblem makes this a pain with things like forced deployments and units joining your army mid-battle. Despite knowing how all this would astronomically increase my anxiety levels, I decided to try and find out if my favorite character Sylvain, our resident crest hater and skirt chaser, can clear the entirety of 3 houses, Academy phase, in Maddening mode by himself. These are the rules I set for this solo run. New Game Plus is allowed. I mean, this is Maddening mode. It's already hard enough with a full army, but with a single unit, we need to unlock those skill levels. Only Sylvain can enter combat with enemy units. Green ally units are obviously exempt from this rule. They'll do whatever the AI wants them to. I will allow the use of dancers for maps where they can be safely deployed. For healing, I will get the full use of 1 healing item per map. For maps where victory conditions depend on the survival of green ally units, I'll allow 1 other character other than Sylvain to use healing skills on those units. DLC items will be allowed. Yes, this run is pay to win. With all that out of the way, let's get to the run. Sorry, post-voiceover recording Aqua here. Before we really get into the video, I just want to say, as you might have guessed from the title of this video, we'll only be covering the first quarter of this Academy phase run here. I have the full gameplay footage already recorded, but it's taking a really long time to edit it. So I decided to split it up into 4 parts so I could have something to show to everyone. Okay, now let's get to the run. After skipping the prologue, since we still don't have access to the students at that point, the first thing we do is get all the DLC stat boosters and unlock all of Sylvain's skills and class masteries from previous files. When I play Fire Emblem, I like to stick with the canon classes, so I always just made my Sylvain a Dark Knight since that's what the game seems to be pushing him to be. But as a result of this, while his lance and reason and writing skills were super high, everything else was pretty low level. Other than his axe skill anyway, since after mastering Dark Knight I tried to make him into a Great Knight, but I couldn't even start raising his army skill because I was already at the end of the game. Maybe I'll finally get Great Knight Sylvain in this run. I also raised Dimitri's writing skill to unlock the Movement +1 ability, which is going to be really important since he's a forcibly deployed unit for quite a few chapters, and we need all the movement we can get on him so he can run away from enemies. Getting this on Byleth would be way better since they're a forced deployment for every single chapter, but I never ever worked on their writing in my previous playthroughs. So unlocking that skill for them is going to take a long time. Either way, there's nothing else to say for this segment, since we technically only get 1 free exploration day with a single activity point, so we can just go straight into the first month's battle. For the mock battle, I assigned Felix as adjutant because I thought I'd use him as my dancer for the run, but that doesn't end up happening as you'll see later in the run. Starting the battle, the first thing I do is move Sylvain into the trees for those avoid buffs and let the enemies come to him. For this part of the map, dispatching Lorenz, Ignatz, and Dorothea is pretty simple, so here's the compilation for that part. As we approach the remaining golden deer, I position Sylvain only in range of Hilda to draw her out of the forest, and wait for her to come to him first. Claude also moves out too, and he doesn't even have close counter at this point, so dealing with him first is a no-brainer. After that, dealing with Hilda isn't much of a problem since she keeps missing, so Sylvain was still at full health. I decide to capitalize on that and move him to the forest again to hopefully keep him as healthy as possible. He kills her next turn when she attacks thanks to the high-level magic he has access to. After Hilda, I move Sylvain just out of Hanneman's attack reach, which is also just enough for Sylvain to get the jump on him in the next turn. Sylvain thankfully has access to the Swift Strike's combat arts, which allows him to hit twice consecutively before the enemy can hit back, so Sylvain is still perfectly healthy at this point of the map. Unfortunately, after getting rid of the golden deer, the black eagles start moving out. It's not so bad at first because they all move west towards Sylvain, but I wanted to take them on one at a time, and after I targeted Ferdinand von Aegir first, Hubert and Edelgard start moving south towards where Byleth and Dimitri are. After I moved the both of them up closer to Sylvain, while Edelgard went back to moving north, Hubert continued closing in from the south, so I had to get Byleth and Dimitri into playing Ring Around the Rosie with him, while Sylvain went on to deal with Edelgard. Thankfully, Sylvain was able to deal with Edelgard easily in one turn, so I was able to get him to Hubert before Hubert could get the jump on Dimitri or Byleth. After all that excitement, dealing with Manuela is very simple since she's a static unit and slow, so Sylvain just doubles her and deals with her in one turn to close out the battle. On to Chapter 2, we get our first round of support conversations, which is Sylvain and Felix, predictably, and Sylvain and Ash. Now is a good time to say that one of my goals for this solo run is to get all of Sylvain's support conversations, or at least for all the characters I recruit. I'll try to keep recruitments to a minimum since recruiting students from other houses removes them as enemies from future chapters, making the run easier. Also, even if we do recruit them, they just go straight into the bench anyway, so there's no meaning in that. I will only get characters required for certain paralogs with good rewards like Lorenz for his relic, or characters that share a paralog after the time skip, like Casper with Mercedes. Now is also a good time to mention that another one of my goals is to clear all the paralogs of the students in the Blue Lions, but reality wasn't so kind for that one, as you'll see later on. We then get everyone started on their path to the earliest flying class they can get so they can more easily get out of enemy range for forced deployment maps. Or at least everyone other than Felix, because I thought I would use him as a dancer, but by not investing in his flying, I'm pretty sure I screwed myself over for the first chapter after the time skip. But that's a problem for future me. Anyway, we move on to this month's mission, making Sylvain beat up some bandits. There's not much to cover here since it's an easy map for Sylvain, who has a pretty decent defense stat early game where there are no magical enemies. Yet. I mostly just take advantage of the grassy tiles and let the enemies come to him so he potentially avoids some hits, especially from axes that hit harder but are less accurate. When the archers moved out, I tended to prioritize them since they have increased attack range with their class ability and they didn't have close counter to hit us back. I just killed as many of the enemy units as possible to farm experience before targeting the boss to end the map. We do have a little race against time at the end with the archer trying to reach Byleth and Dimitri at the bottom of the map, but as usual, Swift Strike saves the day when Sylvain can't double the enemies naturally. Another job well done for Sylvain. For the month of Chapter 3, there's a lot of chances for battles, so I grinded a lot of levels on characters with early paralogs to get them closer to reclassing to flyers. As a result, we unlocked a lot of supports for Sylvain. C support with Dedu, B with Felix, and C with Ingrid in the first free day grinding battles. Then maxed his support with Dedu at B, got C support with Byleth, and B with Ingrid on the second day. Also, incidentally, this is what Sylvain's stats looked like at level 10 during this run. For comparison, this is what a Sylvain following his usual soldier class would look like at the same level. My Sylvain here is doing great everywhere but in dexterity and luck. So far he's been really sabotaging his chances of landing crits, and I kid you not, at this point in the run he hadn't landed a single crit in any battles. His speed's been growing at a really nice rate though, especially since I've been avoiding leveling him up in classes that hinder his base speed growth of 50%, which is his highest base growth after HP at 55. If his speed continues growing like this, he'll probably be able to consistently double axe and lance enemies, and maybe avoid being doubled by speedy sword units. Other than unlocking Dimitri's C support, nothing else happens this month, so we can jump straight into this month's battle. It's a fog of war map, which is super annoying, especially for a solo run where we have to keep certain units out of enemy range. I allowed myself the use of torches with Byleth too for this map so I could move them out of the way more easily. Either way, this map is also really easy for Sylvain. It's just really annoying with the lack of visibility, but at least we just have to worry about dealing with the top of the map since Catherine's got the bottom half. I had to do a soft reset with Divine Pulse because I ended up putting Byleth into enemy range, but at least it's a really simple fix. We just continue onward, letting Sylvain deal with most of the enemies while Catherine deals with some of them when she can actually hit them. We eventually reach the Dark Mage, who's the condition for getting rid of the fog and revealing the boss of the map. After we deal with him, we get a cool Catherine cutscene that makes her look way cooler than what she's actually been doing the entire map, to be honest. From here on, it's really straightforward since we don't have to deal with the fog anymore and we just need to get to Lonato before Catherine can. Before we can do that, we get hit by our first enemy gambit of the run, which, well, when done a gazillion times, a 30% accurate hit is bound to land at some point. It doesn't deal any damage, but since it hits, it does immobilize Sylvain for one turn, so we need to wait an extra turn to be able to reach Lonato. The Lonato kill is kinda exciting because Sylvain gets his first crit of the run, finally, on a 2% chance even. It would be easier to land crits if he had access to Wrath, but we'll have to wait until I can get him to level 20 and master the warrior class to unlock that. For now, crits are kinda sacred. But that's it for the map. No hiccups at all so far. Now in Chapter 4, the mission for this month is the first time the Death Knight makes his appearance, so it's a little scary. Now's a good time to mention another goal for this run, killing the Death Knight in every chapter he appears in, as long as that doesn't get in the way of clearing the map. While I knew the Death Knight was coming, I wasn't particularly worried since the missions so far have been so easy. Honestly, famous last words because, spoiler alert, he was a real pain to deal with. But before we get into those details, the only notable developments this month is that we got Byleth's B support where Sylvain basically tells us that he hates us. Just kidding, not really. And Sylvain finally got his sword skill high enough to get Mercenary certification. Some grinding later, we get Vantage! Now we have the first half for those Vantage Wrath strats. But it'll still take a little bit to get the other half. It actually felt like getting to level 20 took ages while I was recording this. Now for the battle, at the start, I just get Sylvain to go through the middle of the map to cut a path straight towards the Death Knight, but we quickly have to revise that strategy because when I leave Sylvain in range of him, the Death Knight just comes up with a crit rolled and ready, so Sylvain just gets deleted instantly just on the second turn. So, after Divine Pulsing back, I take a detour through the left side of the map and have Sylvain make his way closer to the Death Knight that way. The chest on this side also has Spirit Dust, which was way more valuable than the intermediate seal in the chest on the right side. I also moved Byleth and Dimitri that way because on turn 7 there are 3 enemy reinforcements that spawn from where we start the battle. I just ignore the priest close to Byleth and Dimitri for now since he only has healing spells and focus on other enemies that are bigger threats. At this point, I try to take on the Death Knight again since we have access to the tiles that provide a +2 boost to defense, but it doesn't matter because the Death Knight still crits again. So I leave the Death Knight for now and clean up the other enemies left on the left side of the map. I move Byleth and Dimitri as far left as I can out of enemy range, and manage to get the reinforcements coming from the bottom of the map to go towards Sylvain, so we deal with those too. At this point, Sylvain is in range to initiate combat with the Death Knight, but I don't like the matchups we currently have against him and continue cleaning up the other enemies instead. I also started moving Sylvain and Byleth towards each other because I needed access to the convoy. I noticed that the axes that I put on Sylvain were all super heavy and caused the Death Knight to double him, so I thought maybe I could increase Sylvain's survivability in a Death Knight altercation with an iron axe that's less heavy and would hopefully prevent doubling. My idea was for Sylvain to take a hit or two from the Death Knight and then kill him after a few exchanges. Thankfully, that ends up working out. I'm honestly not sure why I tried this exchange while the Death Knight was on the avoid tile instead of drawing him out of it, but Sylvain miraculously doesn't miss any of his hits in the next 2 turns, thanks Lancebreaker, and we safely make it through defeating the Death Knight in this chapter. After a lot of work. I noticed that I still have a few turns left before the time limit, so I go to the right side to grind some more experience and get the intermediate seal. When the turns start dwindling down, I move Sylvain up towards the boss, but this causes the remaining enemies to target Byleth and Dimitri, so I have to do a little bit of kiting around. Thankfully, the boss for the battle is light work compared to the Death Knight, so we're able to deal with him in 1 turn with just 1 turn left. And that's that for this part of the solo run. There were a few hiccups here and there thanks to the Death Knight in Chapter 4, but this is a great start for Sylvain. We'll be continuing this run in the next video, so make sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon to get notified when the next part is out. Bye for now!